Hello. Is my mic working? Yeah? Awesome. Okay. That was quite the intro. I'm going to try to be daring and unapologetic up here. And the first thing I want to say is to thank you guys for inviting me to be here. I'm truly honored. And watching Delinda and Scott's talk, so much of that rang true. And I think you're going to hear some of the same themes in the journey that I'm about to share with you. I don't have any visuals. So it's just going to be me up here and just the title over and over again. But we'll work with it. 20 years ago, go back 20 years ago, I took a road trip with my little sister from our hometown in Louisiana, which is where I'm from, to New York City, which is where I went to college and worked. And, you know, I'd left the city in one of those I'm never coming back moments and had put all my stuff in a friend's storage unit. And now I wanted my stuff back because if New York City wasn't getting me, it wasn't getting my futon, right? So my sister and I planned this trip to go and get it. And so at the time, I had a disgusting, beat-up old Isuzu Trooper. Do you guys remember those? And it didn't have AC, and it didn't have a CD player. I don't think it had a spare tire, honestly. And we planned the trip on MapQuest. Do you guys remember that, MapQuest? And we brought some printouts and like an old atlas of my dad's that was probably like ancient. And we didn't have Google Maps and we didn't have a navigation system. We didn't have cell phones, right? We didn't use Expedia. I had no idea where we were even going to stop on the way. We just made it up as we went along, right? So I can't imagine taking a road trip like that now, right? Like I don't drive very often without knowing turn-by-turn directions for like every route I could take, right? Every destination is pre-selected. All of our restaurants are researched, right? Like all of our diversions are guided by data now, right? We know the traffic patterns. We know construction. We know accidents, right? Like there is no moment of spontaneity on those kinds of trips anymore. And if I wanted to stop at an attraction, I can pull up thousands of reviews, right? Thousands of reviews and opinions to help me choose that attraction. That's how we take trips these days, right? So I want you to do me a favor. Bear with me. I want everyone to close their eyes just for a second. It's not going to be that painful. Put 2 feet on the ground. If you're crossing your feet, I believe in grounding, right? So you're going to put 2 feet on the ground. You're going to close your eyes. I want everyone to take a deep breath. If you're watching on the webcast, do this, you know, where you're at as well. You look weird. That's fine. Now I want you to imagine your career as a road trip, right? Think about that. What kind of trip is your career? Do you know the destination already? Have you planned all the stops you're going to make on the way, or are you flying by the seat of your pants? Is your path driven by your needs, or is it being driven by the data, what the experts tell you, what the market tells you? Have you left any space to change your destination? How will you know you've arrived? You can all open your eyes now. Thanks for doing that with me. So 9 months ago, I became CEO of the company I'd been at for 6 years. And the number one question I get asked is, how did that happen? Like I'm a shocking world event. And the truth is that I never did think I was going to be the CEO of any company. And the majority of my career, I didn't spend any energy towards the goal of becoming a CEO. Now, before they regret asking me to speak here today, I'm not going to tell you to stop working towards your ambitions. But if I do have some wisdom to share, I'm going to give it to you right now, just like Scott did. Here's the spoiler. You are not defined by your destination. You are defined by all the decisions you make on the way. And your path is entirely up to you. And I'm going to talk today about veering towards the unexpected. So my company is well, it prides itself on experimentation, on curiosity, on iteration, right? We're living and selling innovation as a service. So that's what I wanted when I took the job. I wanted to be in product. I left a really clear, defined career path for a young and scrappy product company because it was exciting, because it felt a little scary. And I really had to let go of some of the things I thought I was supposed to be in my career for that moment. And I saw really quickly I was going to have to jump into conversations that felt over my head and a little uncomfortable. And honestly, there were moments, particularly in the first 6 months, where I thought I'd made a really terrible mistake. I felt that uncomfortable. I was trying to fit in that much. I was trying to prove my value that much that I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. So I took a step back. I gave myself some room to breathe, decided maybe I didn't have to try so hard and I could relax a bit. And then I got pregnant. I was the first pregnant person at the company. I might have been the first pregnant person some of the guys had ever seen. I was like, imagine me in sort of a sea of young men running across the office to throw up. You know, there's nothing like hugging the toilet every morning after stand-up to make you reevaluate where you are in your career. But I thought about it, and it was a huge opportunity for learning, right? And I decided I'd deal with the rest when I wasn't growing a human. So I went on leave, and when I came back from my vacation, I felt really different. I felt bitter, and I felt really lost. Because all I could think was, why did I leave my baby for a job that made me feel so off balance? It was really hard coming back. And I was in conference rooms pumping, crying. I was booking travel away from my child to prove I was still in the game, that I wasn't different, that they could still count on me. I showed up every day, day in, day out, with all the energy I could muster. But I was sleep deprived and I was harried. One morning, I showed up for our staff meeting, reached in my pocket to pull out my cell phone, and it was our baby monitor, which I had grabbed instead of my phone on the way out the door. Those were some dark weeks, really, really dark weeks. And again, something had to give. So once again, I found myself trying to let go of the expectations I had about my career, let go of my ego a little bit, let go of trying to prove I was the smartest person in the room. Again, I gave myself a little space. I stepped back a little bit. I tried to remember what curiosity felt like, right? And day by day, I started to feel a little bit better. I started to enjoy the work a little bit more. And then I got a couple product launches under my belt, and some clarity arrived. What if my greatest strength was navigating ambiguity instead of always knowing the outcome? What if I approached my career with the same experimental mindset we approach products, the same gleeful and graceful acceptance of failure as an opportunity? What if my career to date was just an MVP, waiting for some iteration? What would I give myself permission to do with that kind of space? So some of the things I did was mentor someone else instead of always looking for my mentor. I remember learning for learning's sake instead of trying to prove something. I let other people lead instead of always feeling like I had to take charge. I let my ego out of it again. They say it takes 10,000 hours, I think, to become an expert, right? 10,000. I probably had to clock at least half that before I started to feel valuable again. And then a funny thing happened. Right as I was sort of getting my bearings and getting this whole working mom thing down, I got promoted. Unexpectedly, my CEO asked me to join the leadership team and run client services. That was a destination I no longer thought I was moving towards, and yet there I was. And it'd be easy to think I hadn't worked for it, but I had. I had just worked differently. And then more time passed, and once again, right as I was getting the hang of it, another unexpected diversion. Our head of sales departed really suddenly, leaving his team completely untethered, blowing in the wind. It was going to take time to replace him, and I knew someone had to step up and take the reins. The first sales meeting we had after he departed, I looked around the room. There were no volunteers. I took a breath, I stood up, and I ran the meeting. Then I took on his direct reports. Then I took responsibility of the pipeline. And then I was running sales and client services. I don't have a background in sales. I've been in delivery my whole career. I've worked with sales my whole career, but I've never led a sales team. But that team welcomed me. They supported me. And we went on the adventure together. And let me tell you, I made some mistakes. But every mistake I made, I regrouped, right? I tried again. I made sure to learn from those mistakes. And I tried to do it better the next time. I don't think I understood in the moment when I stood up at that meeting the magnitude of what I was taking on. It was supposed to be temporary, after all. I was responsible for two really important parts of the company, and I learned a tremendous amount about the business, for sure. But I really learned a tremendous amount about myself, right? Because that year, I learned what I was capable of more than my entire career. And while I did feel lonely sometimes, I did not do it alone. So I've had some really great bosses in my career, particularly women. But when I looked around in that atmosphere, there really wasn't an obvious choice. And the truth is, I haven't had much luck finding a mentor, right, that follows me through my career. So to find the support I needed, I was really going to have to get creative and intentional. So the first thing I did was get an executive coach. The second thing I did was get a therapist, because my executive coach said I had to do that, which is good advice. It was really good advice. The next thing I did was invest my time and energy in the women around me, because they made me dream bigger than I ever had on my own. And I did realize at one point that I still wanted that community of women leaders, right? People who were going through the same challenges I was. So my team got together and we created a dinner series. Right? We invite 12 women who are leaders in any variety of industries, not all technology, not all consulting. We get together over food and wine, copious amounts of wine, and we connect. And we talk about the real problems we're facing. We even talk about solving the real problems we're facing. We found a way, despite my crappy networking skills, and believe me, they are crappy, to still create a tribe. Those dinners, each and every one of them, fill me with such admiration for women and such inspiration for what I could be capable of. I can't speak highly enough about those moments with those women and talking and connecting in a one-on-one basis. You know, I feel like women in particular fret about the moments we're unqualified for, right? The things we don't think we have enough experience for. We think about needing big ideas, right? Big thoughts, big plans. One of the most valuable things you can do is step up and solve a problem by showing up each and every day and putting one step in front of the other until the problem's in a distance. When we talk about innovation, we also talk about it in these big leaps, right? And sharp pivots. But it can be smaller than that. It can be the little curves that divert you from the thing you thought you always wanted, but that open up something you had never even thought about. That's innovation too. Not even a year after I started running sales and client services, I took over the company. And I would love to tell you that everything I went through on the way there has prepared me for what this role entails. But the truth is, it hasn't. I am still faced with problems I don't know how to solve. And I still make mistakes on the reg. But I still try to learn from each and every one of those mistakes. And sometimes I have moments of courage that shock me. Some days I hit it so far out of the park, and I think about my resume and all the stories it doesn't tell. I am not defined by being a CEO any more than any of you are defined by your role. And if you walk away from this remembering anything, have it be these three things. 1, don't fear the unexpected. Welcome it. 2, step into the things that make you afraid, because that's when you're going to become a leader. 3, build your tribe. Find them however you can. Pour your support and love into them, because they will make you stronger than you ever could be on your own. I want to say one thing about allies, because I really loved Scott's presentation. And I have intentionally surrounded myself with quite a few women, but it's not all women. I have some really important men in my life, too, who've stepped up in ways I never predicted. My husband, first and foremost, is providing unwavering support to me and is really modeling to our daughter what a balanced partnership looks like. My CFO, himself a former CEO, has given me tons of space and room to find my own path to leadership. And my founder trusts me in ways that still surprise me. There are allies out there. You do want them, you do need them. So that road trip I took with my sister, well, we fought a lot. We got sick a little. We ran out of money. We stayed at some truly disgusting motels. We saw a bear. We drank cheap wine at sunset on the beach. And we made it to get my stuff. And by the way, my stuff was so crappy and so not worth that trip. But we brought it back anyway, and we made it back in one piece, only slightly damaged, and we were really sick of each other when we got home. But it was such an amazing trip. So have an amazing trip. Thank you so much for having me.
That's awesome, Carey. First off, thank you very much. I've never actually seen anyone get all of our employees to close their eyes like that in one time.
It's my signature trick.
I thought that was fantastic. The trip down memory lane with MapQuest and everything else, I thought that was great. Having been an executive in an agency before, running client services and sales, you're insane. And I think finally, we can all agree that they chose the right person for the job. So congratulations. Yeah. Quickly, just kind of recapping some of the Avanade things. Obviously we heard from a woman in our business and from a fantastic male ally from Accenture. I wanted to highlight a few of the things to kind of reiterate on the coaching and mentoring side. Obviously, we are trying to improve our formal and informal coaching and mentoring programs within the company. All up, women or not, we're trying to always improve our career advisor experience. And I think it's a fantastic thing that we continue to really invest in our executive development programs like the Avanade Leadership Development Program for women as well. So with that, I'm going to stop talking because I think we want to hear more about Carey's outside-in perspective here. And I want to open up to the room and virtually for some questions for Carey.
Okay, I'll start it off. A question from Scotland, all the way from Scotland.
Wow.
What is one piece of advice you would give women starting out in IT?
Oh, well, I don't know that I have advice specifically for IT, but I've got advice for women starting out. So I think a big part of it, navigating your career, is learning to express a point of view, right? So this is something that comes up with consulting a lot, but I think it matters in any industry you go in, including IT. So, in the early part of your career, I think there's a lot of fear around expressing a point of view. You might not even know what that means, the point of view thing. Like, well, I don't know what my point of view is, but that's a really important part of your development in your career. And I encourage you to be thinking about that as you are faced with challenges or you're involved in problem solving or even sort of tangentially around problem solving, to think about your opinions about that, to think about what you think about that rather than just what the group thinks about it. Even if you don't express it, that's a skill that's going to take you all the way right through your career, this idea of your point of view. And then as you progress, that's when you really work on your ability to express it, right? Like, I have a way of expressing my point of view, and everyone's is different. And it's a real skill to get there. And I think women in particular put it off, right? We tend to be quiet until we know exactly what to say, right? We tend to be quiet until we know what we're going to say is like really smart or the right thing. And that's pretty dangerous because you need to be exercising that muscle of figuring out your point of view early on. Then you work on expressing it.
Keep going.
We have a question.
Oh, go for it.
Put my notes away now.
Hey, so now that you've moved up through the company and are now CEO, what steps have you taken at Substantial to make it more diverse?
That's a great question. And to be honest, it's still one of our biggest challenges. I think it'd be easy. Our executive team is very diverse, and there's a woman CEO. So I think symbolically people might, from the outside, think, well, they've got that solved. And I can tell you right now, we do not. We are a technology company, and our group of engineers is not as diverse as I would like, certainly doesn't have as many women, but is not where it should be. This year, the way we're tackling that is we're bringing in a DEI consultant to really look at all the things we've tried, both in recruiting and in our pipeline and our benefit package, everything, top to bottom, because I'm just not sure what to do next, to be perfectly honest, and there's a lot of experts out there who I think can help. So I'll come back and tell you because I don't know how to solve it, and I really, really want to.
And we can help you out along the way.
Yeah.
Good question, Lamendi.
How do you balance tackling the unexpected while owning your own fear and vulnerability?
Oh. Did you say it was like a job interview? Yeah, it's a job interview, and we're friends, people. That's what Dylan said. How do I tackle the unexpected while, say it again, Eden?
While owning your own fear and vulnerability.
I am a person who feels a lot of emotions. I'm a big emotion person. So when I feel fear, it's really big. And when I feel vulnerable, I'm really vulnerable, like those vulnerability hangovers, like Miss Brene Brown says. So that's been a big part of my journey later in my career, was sort of balancing that part of me, being authentic to that part of me, while still being an effective leader. And I think for me, the way I handle the unexpected, and there's downsides to this, I'll get to that in a second, but is to step in. Right? Like if someone said, what's your superpower? I hope that's no one's question because I just spoiled it. What's your superpower? I get asked that a lot. What's your superpower? I think my superpower is stepping in to my fear, is just doing it. Go in and do it. Now, what's the downside to that? It's a way I conquer my fear, and I tell this story. I went cliff diving in Hawaii once, and cliff jumping. I didn't dive, let's just be honest. But it was really scary, and as I climbed up the coral, I got it all in my feet. My feet were hurting, and then you stand up on this cliff, and it looks bigger and like deeper than you ever thought it would be, and they're trying to explain how to do it, right? This guy is sitting there going, this is how you jump off a cliff, and I'm just going, I hear wah, 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 and then I hear who wants to go first. And all I could think in that moment was how terrified I was, so I was like, I'll go, and just jumped off the cliff, like this. And I missed the part where he said, keep your legs together, first of all, because I wasn't listening. So that's the downside. I think there's a balance, right? When I say go, dive in, jump in, I don't mean without a thought of care of your safety or whatever. But I do really believe that a lot of problem solving is about showing up, being there, and just working the problem.
Other questions in the room? Oh, wait.
How do you know when it's the right time to lean into your fear? Like kind of like Delinda was talking about, you don't lean into every single fearful situation. So how do you pick and choose which situations you're leaning into?
Well, it's not when you're on a cliff. It's not then. I don't know that I always do. I mean, I think that's part of it. Like my philosophy is that it's going to be better, it's going to be more valuable than not to go ahead and lean into my fears every time than it would be to sort of hold back. But I think, you have to trust your gut a little bit. I think about when I was joining Substantial, how scared I was, particularly that first 6 months, and a lot of me wanted to leave. A lot of me wanted to go back and get a different job that felt more like my last job. And particularly when I came back from maternity leave, there was a lot of fear there too. And I'm really glad I didn't follow my fear in those instances. I'm really glad I stayed the course. So am I answering your question? I feel like I'm deflecting it a little bit. I don't mean to. I think it's a little bit of your gut. I think you get better at it the more you try. But I think more often than not, you should lean into what you're afraid of. That goes for feedback too. Like if you get feedback that feels really scary, there's something there. Doesn't mean it's true. It just means dig into that a little bit. Yeah.
Dave has a question.
Hi, Carey. So, terrific presentation. Thank you for coming. As you talked about leaning in step by step, at a certain point, after you've been leaning in for a while, step by step, you may decide it's not working, right? Change course. Could you talk a little bit about situations like that, where you've leaned in for a while and you're not getting to where you want to be?
Yeah. I definitely would describe a few of those years at the company I'm at like that. And I was, really struggling for a variety of reasons, which I talked about, and was trying to decide if it was time to try something else. And one of the things that I think is really important in those moments is options, right? So when you're facing a moment where you're questioning, like, what should I do next? Is this the right path or not? Having some options, right, is a really good thing. So I hope my whole journey metaphor doesn't have you walking away thinking, well, I'll just wait till something appears, right? That's not what I mean. Stop bugging me, watch. I think it's important to have options. So there was a few moments, and several times in my career when I've been struggling with whether or not I was on the right path. And one of the things I did was interview. Like, go out and interview. Not because I was trying to threaten the company I was working with, but because I needed to know what was out there, right? Like, I wanted to experience what it would feel like to talk about problem solving in a different environment. I didn't end up leaving, but it was really good knowledge to have for me. And whether it's that or something else, I think when we're on a path, if we don't know what another path could look like, it's going to be real hard to divert from that, right? You've got to open up something, right? You've got to open up your network. You've got to maybe try interviewing, or you've got to go back into learning mode, because if you don't have any if you can't visualize other options, you're going to end up on the same path.
More questions? All right. What is your view of the advice that everyone should have a 5- and 10-year plan for their career?
I think if you're that person, great. I would never tell a person who feels good about having a 5 or 10-year plan that's a bad idea. If you are that person, good for you, great, work your plan, but be ready for it to completely fall apart, like have some grit, right? It's probably not going to go exactly as you thought, but if that energizes you, go for it. That was not me at all. I think that's abundantly clear from my journey. I think that's probably why when I get described a lot, it's she's had an unconventional path to CEO. That word is used a lot. I think that's what they mean. I didn't have a plan. I didn't go to business school. I didn't say I'm going to be CEO of a company. And yet here I am. And that was for being open to options, for stepping in, for all the things I talked about. But I don't think having a plan is bogus. I just think a lot of us don't work like that, right? That's not what energizes. And I would say if your plan is limiting you, right, which it's hard to always know that, but that's like if your plan is so narrow that there's just that one thing, I would open it up a little bit.
We have time for one more question.
A question from Nevada. How do you deal with non-allies?
Ooh. I have a real dirty look face. So, I do, I try to handle it with some grace. I try to handle it with empathy, which I think is sort of what I was getting at with the quote that you read, which is that, I'm 45, and the world has changed dramatically in just the last few years. It's not impossible to conceive that people are having a hard time keeping up, that really, with all the efforts that they are putting into it, they are behind on things. So I try to go with that mindset. Let's pull you forward into the now. I will tell you that certainly after the last year and the experience I've had with the men in my life and how they've stepped up to support me, that's given me great hope, right? And these aren't young men. These are older men who've been around the block for a while, who really seeing the world differently, I think. So I have a lot of hope. But I think in those moments, it is our responsibility to say something. And it's uncomfortable sometimes, and it's icky, and even I struggle with it all the time. It's not easy. But to do so with empathy and compassion.
Okay, with that, I want to thank Carey,
Yeah.
CEO of Substantial.